40 years ago, a guy named Chris was still a very young traveler. It so happened that he came to Alaska. The mysterious local nature attracted the traveler. But his main goal was gold, which Chris mined there with a group of enthusiasts. Most of the time, they stayed in groups of a few people. Going out into the wild alone was dangerous, but it so happened that the guy did go out while his companions stayed in the hut. Many of them had caught a cold and simply wanted to rest. Chris knew that it was dangerous, but still decided to go for a short outing. He didn't know at the time that instead of jewels, he'd come face to face with a predator. Chris was making his way through the snow. He was already 2 kilometers from the camp and moving slowly towards the riverbed. When, all of a sudden, a large dog caught his attention. He was very surprised. What could a lonely dog be doing in the wild? Chris assumed that its owners might be somewhere nearby. The animal behaved aggressively. Being young and inexperienced, the guy decided to go down the hill and see what was happening there, the distance being about 20 meters. After getting a closer look at the animal, though, Chris froze. What looked at first like a big gray dog turned out to be a huge, wild wolf. Having noticed the man, the animal bared its fangs and offered up a menacing growl. Since the gold digger had no chance of escaping, he simply closed his eyes and accepted his fate. But the animal didn't move. When he opened his eyes, the guy realized that the wild animal was caught in a trap left out by poachers. Moreover, it wasn't just a male wolf, but a nursing mother wolf. The man realized that the animal obviously needed help, but the she-wolf didn't want to let him come closer, and the man wasn't really too keen on the idea either. Chris's mouth was dry. He was sweating. Just imagine yourself in his place, alone in the woods, and if there were other wolves around, no one could help him. But what could he do? Leave the poor animal to die? Perhaps that's what someone else would do. But Chris realized that the wolf den might be somewhere near, and that the pups might still be alive. He only needed to find them and bring them to their mother. The paw prints went quite far. The guy was fighting himself in his head. What am I doing? Fear was taking over him as he moved farther and farther away from the camp, following the footsteps. The guy had to walk for several kilometers in the snow before he managed to find the den with the pups. When Chris was getting closer, the little pups got frightened, as any other babies would, at the sight of the big and scary person. There was no time for hesitation. So, Chris decided to trick them. He had some food with him which he decided to put near the entrance of the den. And it worked. Chris held out his hand, and the pups grabbed his fingers and began to suck on them. They had been starving for a while, apparently. The man realized that their mother had probably been in the trap for a few days already. He took out a bag he had on him and put the pups in it. The trip back took him about an hour, and all this time the pups whined and floundered in the bag, and even tried to growl. Even before the man got to the mother wolf, he heard a large moan. Most likely the mother sensed the smell of the pups. The guy untied the bag with the little ones, and the 4 pups rushed to their mother, whining loudly. They immediately buried themselves in her stomach and began munching loudly. The mother wolf licked her children and watched cautiously to what the traveler was doing. The guy tried to help the wolf out of the trap a few times, but she immediately began to growl every time she saw the man trying to get closer. Our hero had a little meat left, so he threw a few pieces to the wolf. But to his surprise, she refused to eat it, probably suspecting some sort of catch. Chris sat there, watching the family until late in the evening. After it got dark, he returned to his camp but didn't tell anyone about what happened. The next day, when everyone went to work, Chris decided to take more food and go back to the wolf. The gold digger saw that the meat was eaten and that the mother was warming her pups. This went on for several days. Every morning the young man would go to the animal and feed her, but she still continued to growl at him every day. The pups, however, began to trust the man on the third day already and happily jumped around him and licked his hands. When the man would pet the pups, the mother watched them intently, and as soon as his hands would touch the little ones, she'd immediately call them over. She didn't trust the stranger. Chris didn't give up, and for a whole week he visited the trapped mother and her pups every day. He lost almost all hope of freeing her, but what else could he do? Just leave them all to die? On the morning of the 7th day, our hero cut off a piece of meat for the wolf as usual, while she closely watched him. At one point, the guy looked up and noticed that the mother wolf slightly wagged her tail. It was a victory. Chris got near the animal very slowly, barely breathing. He opened the trap, finally setting the mother free. She ran off for a few meters and called for her pups to join her. The large family hid in the thick forest. Our hero, Chris, never expected to see them again. A week later, the man returned to his home in Jersey. He'd already forgotten about this story, only sometimes telling it to his closest friends, but no one believed him. 5 years have passed since these events took place. Our hero started working for a finishing company and once again found himself in Alaska, not far from that same place. One day, the man had to deliver a letter to the neighboring village. He left early in the morning on his snowmobile, but it broke down halfway there. He tried everything he could to start it again, but it just wouldn't work. It was very cold. The village was only a few kilometers away, but it was getting dark. 1 kilometer later, he saw a dark silhouette on his way. All the locals knew that being alone far from the village, especially after dark, was suicide. There was danger everywhere and no way to escape from a pack of wolves. Chris panicked. He realized and felt that he was closely watched by a pack of predators. He saw how they skillfully surrounded him, forcing their prey into a circle, slowly closing in on him. He counted 5 large wolves in his head. Chris was already saying goodbye to his life. His heavy breathing and heartbeat were so strong that he couldn't even stand up and fell to his knees. One of the predators was approaching him. It stopped at a distance a couple of meters, but didn't rush to attack the man. As horrified as he was, Chris looked into the eyes of the wolf and recognized them. It was the same mother wolf. She was much older, her fur had gotten dull, but it was definitely her. The animal tensed up closely, watching the man. Their eyes met for less than a minute, after which she wagged her tail a couple of times and ran back into the forest. The rest of the pack soon followed. This time, the saved animal disappeared into the snow forever, and the traveler safely reached the village. It so happened that one day, a man saved the life of a wolf and her pups, and many years later, the wolf paid him back.